The sky over the death world glowed a sickly green, filled with swirling toxic clouds. The wind howled like a living thing, carrying dust and tiny shards of rock that cut through anything not protected. Reelin adjusted her goggles and tightened the straps on her survival pack. Every step she took was calculated. On a planet like this, one careless move could mean death. She had grown up here, trained by the harsh environment itself, and the dangers had made her sharp, quick, and aware of every sound and shadow. Her mission today was unlike any she had faced before. Scouts reported a group of alien invaders on a nearby resource-rich planet. They were not ordinary enemies. They were the Varkari, a technologically advanced species that prided themselves on being untouchable. No being in the galaxy, they claimed, could challenge them. Entire civilizations had fallen to their fleets, and even the strongest mercenary groups avoided their territory. Yet here she was, a single human girl from the harshest world imaginable, observing them from a distance, unseen and underestimated. Reelin crouched behind a jagged outcrop of rock, her eyes scanning the alien encampment below. Their technology shimmered in the dim light. Shields hummed, drones patrolled the perimeter, and their weapons, unlike anything she had seen before, gleamed with deadly precision. The Varkari moved with arrogance, their long limbs and sharp claws giving them a terrifying elegance. They laughed at the local creatures, tossing rocks at predatory beasts that had no chance against them. They were confident, too confident, and Reelin noted every detail. Despite their confidence, she saw cracks in their perfection. The Varkari relied heavily on sensors and automated defenses. They moved in predictable patterns, and their communication systems, though advanced, were fragile if disrupted. Reelin's mind raced, calculating possibilities. One wrong step would trigger alarms. But one clever move could show the Varkari that humans were not so easily dismissed. She remembered her father's words from long ago. A Deathworld child learns to survive where others die. Never underestimate the small, clever, and quick. Those lessons guided her now as she crept along the ridge, each movement deliberate. The wind shrieked past her, but she kept her body low, her eyes focused. Every sound, every vibration beneath her feet was measured. The aliens below did not notice her. They had no reason to. They were certain nothing on this planet could threaten them. Reelin paused, peering through a break in the clouds. One of the Varkari soldiers leaned over a railing, peering down at the barren landscape, as if it were nothing. She studied the soldier, noting the glint in its eyes, the way it held its weapon with casual arrogance. A creature like this, used to victory and power, would not suspect the smallest human of daring to touch its world, let alone challenge it. The girl allowed herself a small smile. It was enough to know that she had observed them without being seen. Even now, her heart pounded in her chest, not from fear, but from the thrill of knowing that she could act where others would hesitate. Every step she had taken, every lesson learned on the death world, had prepared her for this moment. The Varkari thought themselves untouchable. They had no idea a human, hardened by storms, predators, and poisoned lands, was watching them. Hours passed as she continued her observation. The aliens' patterns became clearer. Patrol shifts, feeding routines, and security rotations, all repeated with predictable rhythm. Reelin noted each detail in her memory, imagining how she could use it to her advantage. Even the smallest detail mattered. A drone that paused slightly longer over a certain path, a sentry that never looked to the left. To others, these would be inconsequential, but to her, they were the keys to survival and opportunity. As the green sky darkened into a strange twilight, Reelin moved to a safer vantage point, still hidden but closer. She could see the alien commander now, a tall figure with a ceremonial crest and glowing sigils along its limbs. It exuded authority and power, and the soldiers around it obeyed without question. They were disciplined, efficient, and ruthless, yet still blind to the girl who had walked these hazardous lands her entire life. The death world had taught her to sense danger before it arrived. She felt the faint vibrations through the rocky ground, a warning of shifting terrain. A sudden gust blew dust into the alien camp, causing a few of them to frown and adjust their shields. Reelin noted it carefully. Even nature could be an ally if one knew how to use it. She imagined how a well-timed diversion could confuse the aliens, how the storms that others fear could become her advantage. Night fell and the toxic clouds thickened, making the alien lights flicker in the distance. Reelin settled behind a ridge, reviewing everything she had observed. Her mind worked quickly, connecting patterns, testing scenarios, imagining every possible response. One touch, one move, could break the illusion of invincibility the Varkari had built around themselves. The aliens thought themselves untouchable. They had never faced a human who had been forged by a planet that wanted her dead from birth. As she prepared to return to her temporary camp for rest, Reelin allowed herself one thought, one certainty. They were not ready for what was coming. Not yet. A human could endure what no Varkari could imagine. Small, clever, fearless. She was all of these things. And tomorrow, she would begin to prove it. In the darkened landscape of the Deathworld, beneath toxic skies and amidst the echoes of alien confidence, one human girl moved silently, invisible yet fully aware. The Varkari believed themselves untouchable. Reelin knew otherwise. The first step had been taken, and soon the galaxy would witness that even the mighty could be challenged by the unlikeliest of beings. Her eyes glimmered in the dim light, reflecting the determination of someone who had survived every impossible trial her world had thrown at her. The Deathworld Girl would not be ignored. The untouchable would be touched, and the galaxy would see the strength and cunning of humanity. Reelin moved carefully through the jagged canyons of the Deathworld, each step deliberate, each breath controlled. The wind howled, carrying sharp particles of rock and dust, but she had learned to use it as cover. It masked the faint sounds of her movements, hiding her presence from alien sensors and patrols. Her eyes scanned the horizon, noting the distant glimmer of the Varkari encampment. From here, she could see the aliens clearly, tall, elegant, and arrogant, moving as if the entire universe belonged to them. She crouched behind a rock formation, her survival pack pressed against her back. The Varkari's patrols moved with precise rhythm, scanning the surrounding terrain. Drones hovered above, humming with alien technology, their sensors sweeping the ground. Most beings would freeze in fear at the sight of such overwhelming surveillance. But Reelin was not most beings. She had survived storms that shredded flesh, predators that hunted with perfect instinct, and lands that poisoned the unprepared. To her, this was just another challenge, one that required patience, observation, and intelligence. Reelin studied their routines. Every patrol had a rhythm, every drone a predictable path. The aliens laughed as they went about their duties, mocking the small creatures of the planet and tossing stones at them. Their overconfidence was palpable, and it made her smile slightly. These creatures had never faced a human born of a death world. They had never encountered someone who could use the environment itself as a weapon. Hours passed as she tracked their movements. She memorized shift changes, noting which aliens were more alert and which relied too much on technology. The commander, a tall figure with glowing sigils, moved to the camp with an air of authority, unaware that someone was watching every detail. Even the smallest nuances mattered. A drone that paused a fraction longer, a sentry that never looked left, a maintenance schedule that left gaps in their defenses. These were opportunities, and Reelin stored each in her mind like pieces of a puzzle. The girl's senses were heightened. She could feel vibrations through the rocky ground, sense shifts in the wind, and hear the distant hum of alien engines. Every sound told her something. Every shadow held information. A small movement, a Varkari soldier shifting its stance, revealed where its attention truly lay. She noted these details carefully, knowing that the key to survival lay in understanding the enemy, not rushing into confrontation. Reelin also observed how the aliens underestimated the planet. They ignored local dangers, thinking their shields and weapons made them invincible. Predatory beasts circled the perimeter, curious or hungry, but the Varkari ignored them. They assumed nothing could touch them. This arrogance, she realized, was their greatest weakness. It blinded them to the environment, to human ingenuity, and to the possibility that one small, clever being could disrupt their perfect order. She moved silently along a ridge closer to the camp, using rocks and shadows for cover. A sudden gust of wind swept through, and a cloud of dust momentarily hid her movements. Timing was everything. She waited for patrols to pass before inching forward again, keeping low and blending with the terrain. The Varkari sensors missed her entirely, their arrogance making them blind to possibilities that humans instinctively noticed. From her new vantage point, Reelin could see more of the camp. Supply areas, guard rotations, and communication relays were all visible. She mentally mapped each area, noting which paths offered stealth and which could be used for distraction. One patrol, she noticed, always paused near a fuel container, completely unaware of the rocks and wind that could cover her approach. Another drone hovered over the same path repeatedly, its sensors predictable and exploitable. As the day wore on, she observed small interactions among the aliens. Some were careless, laughing too loudly, dropping equipment, or leaving gaps in their coordination. Others were disciplined, yet even they followed predictable patterns. She studied them all, recognizing that no system, no matter how advanced, could match the creativity and adaptability of a human mind. Every detail reinforced a single truth. Their power was not absolute. It could be challenged, outsmarted, and exploited. Reelin also took note of communication methods. The aliens relied heavily on signals and codes that could be intercepted or misdirected. She remembered lessons from her father and teachers. Technology is only as strong as the beings who wield it. Over-reliance on machines and systems made the Varkari vulnerable to unpredictability. A single clever act could throw them into confusion. As twilight approached, she shifted again, finding a high perch where she could observe without being seen. The sky glowed green and toxic, casting eerie shadows across the camp. She watched the commander give orders, soldiers responding with mechanical precision, and drones scanning for threats that were not there. Reelin's mind raced with possibilities. Each routine, each predictable move, was a thread she could pull. Her survival instincts told her to rest soon, but she stayed longer, knowing that every minute of observation increased her chances of success. Humans had survived worse than the Varkari. Humans had endured Deathworld's wars and impossible odds. One small, fearless human could make a difference where others failed. As night fully fell, Reelin finally retreated to a hidden nook behind jagged rocks. Her mind replayed everything she had seen, cataloging weaknesses, strengths, and opportunities. The Varkari were confident, arrogant, and unprepared for someone who had been trained by death itself. They believed themselves untouchable. She knew better. The wind whistled past her as she settled into a shallow crevice for rest. Even here, she stayed alert, senses attuned to the faintest sound or shift in the air. Tomorrow, she would begin to act on what she had learned. The aliens thought they were invincible, but humans had a strength they could not measure. Creativity, courage, and the ability to see possibilities beyond algorithms and rules. Reelin's eyes glimmered in the dim light, reflecting determination and quiet confidence. The Varkari's arrogance blinded them, and that blindness would be their undoing. A human's mind, shaped by the harshest world in the galaxy, was ready to strike where they least expected it. Tomorrow, stealth would turn into action, and the untouchable would face a truth they had never imagined. Reelin moved carefully through the dense undergrowth, her boots barely making a sound on the jagged rocks. The alien camp lay just beyond the clearing, their bright lights cutting through the dark shadows of the Deathworld. She had spent hours watching, learning their routines, studying their patterns. Every moment had prepared her for this, one precise action that could change everything. Her target was not the soldiers or the drones, at least not yet. It was one of the alien creatures she had observed more than the others, a Varkari scout, alone on the perimeter. It moved with mechanical precision, its body glinting under the pale light, scanning the terrain for threats that weren't there. Reelin crouched behind a rock, her eyes fixed on it. She could feel the pulse of her heartbeat in her ears, the tension in her muscles, and the thrill of the unknown. She had practiced this moment in her mind countless times, imagining how she would approach, how she would act, how she would survive. The first touch, the simplest human action, was more dangerous here than it would have been anywhere else. A single misstep could trigger alarms, bring drones, and summon soldiers who were lethal in ways most beings could not comprehend. But she was ready. Slowly, she stepped out from her cover, moving with the quiet grace she had learned from years surviving on the Deathworld. Her hand reached forward, trembling slightly, but her mind was sharp, focused. The scout noticed her movement, its head swiveling with a flicker of surprise. Reelin froze, letting the paws stretch, making herself appear non-threatening. The alien's eyes glowed faintly, scanning, analyzing. It was curious, cautious, unsure. Reelin's hand hovered a few inches from its armored shoulder. She remembered the lessons of her youth. Show no fear, but also show respect. Humans had survived predators far worse than this alien. The key was timing, understanding, and connection. Then she did it. Her fingers brushed against the alien's shoulder in the gentlest touch she could manage. A static hum ran along its metallic surface. Its body stiffened, sensors blinking rapidly, but it did not attack. Reelin held her ground, letting her touch speak without words. She wanted the alien to understand something simple. She was not a threat. For a long moment, nothing happened. The scout's eyes focused on her, analyzing, calculating, sensing. Reelin felt the weight of every second, knowing the alien could react with lethal force at any moment. But instead, it lowered its head slightly, a subtle acknowledgement she interpreted as understanding. She allowed herself a small breath of relief, though her body remained tense, ready to move at a second's notice. The first touch had broken a barrier, not just between species, but between fear and possibility. Reelin's hand remained on the alien for a heartbeat longer, reinforcing the gesture. In the cold, toxic winds of the Deathworld, that single, brave touch carried meaning that went beyond language. It was a connection, fragile but undeniable. As she slowly withdrew, the alien did something unexpected. Instead of raising an alarm or moving away, it tilted its head, examining her with curiosity. Its sensors flickered in a pattern that seemed almost thoughtful. Reelin realized she had glimpsed something rare, an intelligence willing to question assumptions. Humans had a way of doing that, surviving and understanding where others simply followed orders. Reelin stepped back fully into the shadows, but her eyes never left the alien. She studied its reactions, the subtle shifts in posture, the micro-adjustments that betrayed its focus. She noted them all, knowing that even this brief encounter could inform her next moves. The first touch had not only proven her courage, but also begun to teach her about the alien's behavior, its reactions, and its potential weaknesses. Night deepened around her. The camp's lights blinked faintly, the drone's hums cutting through the darkness. Reelin felt a new sense of confidence. If one human touch could elicit such a response, perhaps there were other ways to manipulate expectations, to create openings where none seemed possible. She had begun to shape the battlefield with her understanding, not her weapons. A rustle behind her made her turn sharply. A small predator, native to the Deathworld, scurried past, oblivious to the human and alien drama unfolding. Reelin smiled slightly. In this place, every moment, every creature, every reaction mattered. The planet itself was a test of wit and endurance, and she was determined to pass. Returning to her observation point, Reelin replayed the touch in her mind. The alien had not attacked, had not raised alarms, had not fled. She had seen something in its sensors, a hint of curiosity, maybe even respect. Humans were unpredictable, adaptable, and fearless. The Varkari had expected fear. They had not expected courage, intelligence, or the ability to see beyond the obvious. She settled into the shadows, her thoughts racing. Tomorrow, she would act again, perhaps testing boundaries further, exploring the alien's limits. But tonight, the first touch had changed the dynamics. It was a small, silent victory. A human had reached an untouchable alien, and it had not retaliated. Reelin's gaze lingered on the scout for a while longer. Even in this moment of quiet, she knew the path ahead would require more courage, more patience, and more daring. Yet the first touch had shown her something vital. Connection, even with an alien mind, was possible, and with it came opportunity. The wind whispered to the canyon, carrying the scent of metal, dust, and unknown dangers. Reelin adjusted her pack, preparing for the night, but her mind remained alert, focused on the alien, the camp, and the possibilities that lay ahead. One human touch had begun to reshape the assumptions of those who believed themselves untouchable, and she intended to follow it with many more. Reelin crouched behind a jagged rock, surveying the alien encampment with sharp, calculating eyes. The Varkari believed themselves untouchable. They were confident, arrogant, and certain that no human could challenge them. But she had learned the truth. Humans thrived on ingenuity, creativity, and unpredictability. Where brute strength and rigid strategy failed, cleverness could prevail. She had studied their pattern for days. The aliens moved with precision, but that precision was predictable. Each patrol, each sensor sweep, each drone flight followed a rhythm. Reelin memorized it all, noting the blind spots, the timing gaps, the moments when their attention waned. Every error the Varkari made was an opportunity, and she intended to exploit it. Her first tool was simplicity, a small, portable device she had built herself. It was no more than a box with wires, lights, and a few sensors, but in her hands, it became a weapon of chaos. She positioned it at the edge of the clearing, far enough from herself to remain undetected. The moment she activated it, a series of lights flickered, sensors buzzed, and the drones reacted. They moved erratically, unsure of the source of interference. Reelin allowed herself a small smile. The aliens had assumed superiority, but she had introduced uncertainty. While they scrambled to analyze the anomaly, she slipped closer to the camp, silent and deliberate. Each step was measured, each breath controlled. Her presence went unnoticed because she had made herself irrelevant to their immediate concern, the sudden, inexplicable disruption in their systems. She paused behind a supply crate and observed the Varkari commander. Its head swiveled repeatedly, trying to detect the source of the disturbance. Reelin studied the creature carefully. Its arrogance was palpable, even in the way it gestured to subordinates. It expected humans to be afraid, predictable, limited. They had not anticipated resourcefulness, adaptability, or the ability to improvise under pressure. The human mind thrived on improvisation. She had no fleet of ships, no advanced weapons of war. Only her intellect and her courage. But that was enough. In the natural world, small creatures often survived against predators 10 times their size by understanding behavior, exploiting patterns, and taking calculated risks. Reelin was that small creature, and the Varkari were the predators who underestimated her. Using a combination of signals and mirrors, she created an illusion, movement and lights that suggested a human force was approaching from multiple directions. Drones diverted, patrols shifted, and the Varkari scrambled to respond. Each reaction played into her hands, opening spaces where she could move undetected. She felt the thrill of control, not through brute force, but through ingenuity and observation. Then came the critical moment. A small access panel to the alien communication system lay exposed. If she could manipulate it, she could send false signals, mislead patrols, and even create the appearance of internal conflict among the Varkari. It was delicate work. One wrong move, and alarms would sound, ending her mission. Her fingers moved deftly, guided by skill and intuition honed over years of survival in hostile environments. The panel hummed under her touch, responding to her modifications. She injected false coordinates, adjusted sensor parameters, and created phantom signals that would confuse the aliens for hours. The commander swiveled, confused, barking orders that made little sense. Reelin stepped back, heart racing but steady. The camp was in disarray, all without her firing a single shot or risking direct confrontation. She paused to observe the chaos she had created. Alien hubris had blinded them. They believed themselves infallible, immune to human cunning. They assumed that fear alone could keep them safe. But humans were unpredictable. Humans adapted. Humans could turn the smallest advantages into decisive victories. And she had proven it. Her mind raced ahead. The camp was not yet neutralized, but the seeds of disruption were planted. She could use this confusion to gather intelligence, disable key systems, or even escape unnoticed. Each decision relied on observation, planning, and a willingness to act when the moment was right. The Varkari would never see her coming, because they could not imagine a human capable of such precision, patience, and cleverness. Reelin moved to a higher vantage point, scanning the terrain. She noted exits, patrol routes, and supply caches. Every detail was a potential tool, a potential advantage. Alien hubris was a fragile thing, and she had learned to exploit it. Every miscalculation they made, every assumption they clung to, became another opportunity to assert human ingenuity. As night deepened, Rielan allowed herself a moment of reflection. The Varkari had relied on intimidation, strength, and fear. She relied on observation, intellect, and calculated risk. Where they expected compliance, she brought chaos. Where they expected submission, she brought strategy. And that was why humans survived, thrived, and in moments like this could triumph against seemingly invincible foes. With careful steps, she moved closer to the central command tent. Drones flickered. Alarms remained silent because her modifications misled their systems. Inside, critical alien data waited, vulnerable not because of overwhelming force, but because she understood patterns, exploited weaknesses, and acted decisively. Human ingenuity had turned the tide, and she was ready to take the next step. Every calculated movement, every clever adaptation, every moment of patience had led to this point. The Varkari would learn, too late, that underestimating a human was a mistake, and Rielan, quiet, patient, and brilliant in her simplicity, had proven that human cunning was as formidable as any weapon in the galaxy. The wind swept across the Deathworld landscape, carrying dust and whispers of uncertainty. Rielan crouched, watching, planning, and smiling faintly. She had begun the process of turning fear, arrogance, and overconfidence into opportunity, showing that even in a galaxy ruled by superior strength, human intelligence and ingenuity could outmatch alien hubris. The night was hers, and the Varkari's assumptions were crumbling before her eyes. Rielan stood at the edge of the Deathworld plateau, watching the Varkari ship struggle to regain order below. The humans had turned what seemed like impossible odds into a battlefield of confusion for the aliens. Every strategy, every calculation she had made over the past days had brought her to this moment. The Varkari, proud and arrogant, had not accounted for human ingenuity, adaptability, and sheer determination. The once organized alien camp was now a mess of disrupted drones, conflicting signals, and panicked soldiers. Their technology was advanced, but their reliance on rigid patterns and assumptions had been their downfall. Rielan smiled quietly. She had used nothing more than her mind, her patience, and careful observation to create this chaos. Below, the commander of the Varkari moved frantically, attempting to restore order. But every command was countered by the false signals and misdirections Rielan had planted. The aliens had underestimated humans again, and the consequences were visible. The Varkari realized too late that intelligence, adaptability, and courage were as dangerous as any weapon. Rielan descended carefully from the plateau, moving toward the camp. She had no intention of violence. Her goal was demonstration, not destruction. As she approached, a group of aliens froze, unsure whether to attack. They hesitated, confused, because Rielan did not act like a soldier. She moved with confidence, not fear, and with an understanding of their weaknesses. She embodied the human ability to think and adapt under pressure. The humans watching from the nearby cliffs cheered silently. Rielan's actions had not only disrupted the aliens, but had inspired her fellow soldiers. They saw that human intelligence could hold its own against overwhelming force. It was a moment that would be remembered, a testament to what courage and cleverness could achieve. Inside the central command tent, Rielan located the alien data core. She accessed it carefully, downloading valuable information about the Varkari patrols, their fleet locations, and weaknesses in their communication systems. The information was a treasure trove, and it would give humanity a strategic advantage for years to come. The triumph was not just in the chaos she had created, but in the knowledge she had secured. She paused, listening to the faint whines of drones outside, confused and unable to discern reality from illusion. The aliens had relied on fear, intimidation, and superior strength. But Rielan had shown that intellect and observation could overcome even the most daunting odds. Human ingenuity had turned the tide. As night fell, Rielan signaled her team. They moved quietly, gathering the captured technology and evidence. There was no need for direct confrontation. The lesson had already been taught. The Varkari would think twice before underestimating humans again. The legacy of this mission was clear. Intelligence, courage, and creativity were weapons in their own right. Rielan took a moment to reflect. The Death World had been hostile, the aliens formidable, yet humans had prevailed, not through sheer numbers or brute strength, but through strategy, patience, and clever use of resources. She had demonstrated that even in the vast, perilous galaxy, humans could triumph over seemingly insurmountable odds. Returning to the cliffs, Rillin watched the Varkari ships retreat, confused and cautious. They had learned a valuable lesson. Humans were unpredictable, resourceful, and relentless when cornered. The galaxy might be full of superior forces, but the human spirit, intelligent, creative, and courageous, could not be underestimated. Her team gathered around her, eyes wide with admiration. "You did it," one whispered, voice trembling with awe. Rillin shook her head slightly, smiling. "We did it. All of us. Humans survive because we adapt, because we think, and because we refuse to be controlled by fear." Word of the mission would spread quickly. Rillin knew that the story of the Deathworld encounter would inspire future generations of humans. They would remember that the galaxy was dangerous, yes, but also full of opportunities for those willing to observe, learn, and act with intelligence. Human courage and ingenuity had left a mark on the Varkari, and more importantly, on humanity itself. As dawn broke over the jagged landscape, Rillin felt a quiet sense of fulfillment. The mission was a success, but its impact would resonate far beyond this remote death world. Humans had proven that they were capable of facing overwhelming threats, of turning fear into advantage, and of triumphing where others expected only failure. She glanced at the stars, thinking of the countless worlds still unexplored, the countless threats yet to come. Yet she felt confident. Humans were small, fragile, and seemingly insignificant in the cosmic scale. But their minds were sharp, their courage unyielding, and their determination absolute. The galaxy would remember this day, and it would remember humanity. Rillin's victory was not just tactical, it was symbolic. The message was clear. Human ingenuity, resilience, and courage could challenge the strongest forces, and even the most arrogant aliens would have to reckon with it. In the quiet of the Deathworld morning, she allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. Humans had triumphed, and their legacy had been etched into the stars. The Varkari, humbled and bewildered, retreated to regroup, their assumptions shattered. They had underestimated humans once, and it had cost them. But for Rillin and her team, it was a lesson in perseverance, creativity, and the enduring strength of the human spirit. The galaxy had witnessed the quiet power of observation, strategy, and courage, and humanity's place among the stars had been reaffirmed. Rillin looked at her team, proud and resolute. "Remember this," she said softly. "We survive because we think. We thrive because we adapt. And we will always find a way." The team nodded, understanding the weight of her words. It was more than a mission. It was a testament to the triumph of humanity. The death world lay quiet now, the Varkari in retreat, their hubris undone. And among the stars, humans stood taller, not in size, but in spirit, ingenuity, and courage. This was a legacy Rillin had helped to create, a human triumph that would echo across the galaxy for generations to come.